in the attempt to justify their caving, 6 of the 8 Democrats in the Senate who voted to cave at the height of their leverage, understand. I don't know what donors it is that they needed to help. I don't know if they were doing solids for other Democratic senators who wanted to cave, but it was at the height of the leverage. In other words, where the leverage was at its height. I don't know how to articulate that anymore. Like, this was not just a cave. It was an epic cave. In fact, it's not a cave, because a cave implies like the weight of something just became too much and it collapsed. This was literally like going into a cave that is pretty sturdy and then blowing it up, because there was never a moment in the course of the shutdown where Democrats were in a better position. Donald Trump had his lowest approval rating. Not of the month, not of the year, not of the term, his lowest approval rating. Republicans blamed for the shutdown.
Sort of like punting in the red zone for our football fans.
Yes, you're at the 20-yard line and you're like, should we take a field goal? No, actually, let's punt.
And it's first down.
They'll have really, really bad field position, unless, of course, we punt it into the end zone, in which case they'll actually be a yard ahead of us where we are now. Here's Bernie Sanders addressing Angus King's attempt to argue yesterday that the 2 points of the shutdown were to get the ACA subsidy extensions and to deal with Donald Trump to inhibit his power. And he said we didn't do either.
Your fellow independent from New England, Senator Angus King, was asked this morning to respond to your criticisms of the Democrats who voted yes last night. He said his response was, "What's your strategy, man?" And, quote, "Standing up to Donald Trump didn't work."
Well, maybe Angus didn't notice the elections on Tuesday. I thought that they worked pretty well. Maybe Angus is not noticing the polling, which shows that correctly people understand that Republicans control the White House, the Senate, and the House. They are holding Republicans accountable. And you got to stand firm. This is tough stuff. And Angus is right. A lot of people are hurting. Nobody feels good about this. Nobody feels good about federal employees not getting a paycheck. But we are winning, in my view. I think the Republicans are on the defensive. And in my view, it was the vote that Angus cast was the wrong vote.
All right.
Okay. There's no other, like, what does standing up to Donald Trump working look like if it doesn't look like the biggest Democratic win you could have possibly had last Tuesday? The biggest. It couldn't have been better. Nobody can point to a single race that the Democrats lost that they should have won. Nobody can even point to a single race that the Republicans were sort of favored and won. The polling's all on the side. The question is, why did they do it? I have an idea, but here's Bernie Sanders on Brian Tyler Cohen.
Even if by some miracle you got 60 votes, where do you think that amendment would go? Go nowhere.
Right.
Speaker Johnson has made it very clear that he's not going to entertain it. Trump would never cite it. So it is an empty gesture, and that bothers me. It bothers me that people want to raise false hopes. Oh, we're going to bring forth an amendment. That amendment ain't going to go anyplace, period. End of discussion.
Just to make it clear, he's talking about the concession that was extracted from Republicans, a vote in the Senate on maintaining the ACA subsidies. A, it's destined to lose in the Senate. B, even if it won in the Senate, it is not going to be voted on in the House. And as we know from those little cartoons when we were kids, it's got to be passed both in the House and the Senate to actually get signed into law, assuming that Donald Trump would sign it into law, which of course he's not going to. Why did they do this? I think the biggest reason is if you look at these Senate Democrats that voted for this, they either did it on behalf of other people or themselves. This was to protect the filibuster. Because the Republicans had two choices. They were either A, this is if the Democrats held out. They would either A, capitulate to the Democrats, extend the Obamacare subsidies, which they probably wanted to do, but these people are so deranged that even just the idea that they would lose to the Democrats is enough to say that even if the losing to Democrats means that we actually help our constituents and help us electorally because the constituents are not as upset, they still won't do that because this is an authoritarian regime. And you can never, ever let your opponents win anything, get any type of win. We saw it. We saw when Trump said, don't let Biden get a win. Don't do anything bipartisan. They understand this dynamic. So if they weren't going to concede to the Democrats, they had one other option where they literally could just pass whatever they wanted to. They've done this on 3 occasions already, just this year. And that is suspend or get rid of the filibuster. The filibuster is not a law. The 60 vote threshold is not a law. It is a tradition in the Senate, essentially. And they could easily just say, we're going to have a vote to change the rules. The parliamentarian says, you can't really do that. And then John Thune says, hey, remember when we changed the way that we were going to account for the budget in the big, beautiful bill? Forever, we have always said, if something's going to expire, let's say these tax cuts are going to expire, when we account for the cost of the bill that follows it, we use an accounting method where we basically say, okay, the tax cuts are going to expire. We're going to assume they're going to go back up to where they were because the tax cuts expire. And if we cut from there, that's going to cost the government something. They unilaterally decided that they were going to change the way they were accounting. So the big, beautiful bill looked like it cost less. Now, everybody knows it didn't, but on paper, it looked like it cost less. That was one time they got rid of the filibuster. The other time was when they wanted to override California environmental standards. They overrode the filibuster. They could have done it this time. And Trump would have forced them to do it, eventually, the Republicans. But the Democrats, still, they are so institutionally blind. They are such institutionalists. They are so determined to get back to normalcy, even though it is quite clear there's another party that is not normal, that is full-on authoritarian at this point. They wanted to protect the filibuster. They wanted to protect the filibuster more than those Republicans, because if the Republicans want to make it easy for the Democrats to cave, they could have said, okay, we'll do half subsidies. We'll do subsidies for a year. We'll do subsidies for 6 months. But they didn't, because they knew Democrats are going to cave. And why is it so important to people like Chuck Schumer, Catherine Masto-Cortez, Jackie Rosen, Tim Kaine? Why is it so important to them to have the filibuster? So that they can vote for policies that their voters want and know that it won't go into effect because they don't have 60 votes, because they can't get the extra 10 votes they need or 5 votes they need from the Republicans. This is down the road. That's it. Like, this is you want to talk about something that is really about like a class war. This is what it is. Because they're not even, for Jeanne Shaheen, she may never even have, she's never going to take this vote. She's going to retire before Democrats could ever take control of the Senate. But this is, the U.S. Senate was set up to protect the interests of money. I'm talking in our Constitution. When this country started, you couldn't even vote directly for the senators.
We should have called it the House of Lords because I think people understand what it means when you call it that.
100%. And the filibuster is there to thwart. And if you look at it historically and you look at it statistically, it thwarts progressive measures by a 5-1 margin. Because the only thing that Republicans ultimately want proactively is tax cuts. And there's always a reconciliation bill, which avoids the filibuster. And so they never have to worry about any, whatever their agenda is. But in terms of progressives, or just even like mainstream Democrats, this allows Tim Kaine to vote for whatever progressive healthcare measure down the road he might be faced with having to vote for. He needs to be able to justify it to his constituents. I voted for it. But it was a safe vote because he knew it was never going to pass because of the filibuster. I mean, the thing is that if we got rid of the filibuster, you know what the Republicans would do? You know what they would pass? Try and come up with something. They have no other agenda. They did it already. We just cut taxes. They did it. They already did everything that they wanted to do. The only thing would be that they would pass would be some ways of ostensibly, and I don't know how they would do this, and they're not always right, of inhibiting the vote in 2026. But states are doing that anyways. The filibuster is a tool by the Democratic establishment more than any other to thwart progressive change and blame it on somebody else. And that's why they voted this way, because they didn't want Donald Trump to force the Republicans to get rid of the filibuster. Chaco. Chuck always chickens out. I think we're going to use that.
Should have told them it was about taking sanctions off Iran or something.
Exactly. Now, I will say there are other aspects to it. I think preservation of the filibuster was probably one of the primary reasons, was the primary reason why the Democrats caved in the way they did. But I think as a second order issue, what was happening with the airlines was going to put enough pressure on the Republicans where they would get rid of the filibuster to just pass it if the Democrats didn't cave. Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.